Good morning. Great pleasure to be here. Can I, first of all, extend my thanks to ministers and civic leaders, certainly the civic leaders, for the courtesy you've extended to me and the welcome since I've been here. Can I also congratulate Stephen and Infrastructure New Zealand. This is quite a remarkable event, if I may say so. Somebody who spent quite a long time going around different conferences over the years, to actually see leaders, opinion formers, stakeholders for a country all in one place at the same time is quite a remarkable achievement. I should take enormous credit from that. What I want to do, in as little time as possible, is just really start to explain the significance of the Greater Manchester strategy, the Greater Manchester story, what it means for a place, and more particularly how that has influenced a transformational journey. But before I do so, just want to just explain what Greater Manchester is. For those of you who are not familiar, it's a conurbation and economic geography of over 2.8 million people. Of course, the most important part of that diagram is the one in the middle, the hole in the middle, which of course is Manchester. But that represents 10 individual local authorities. And Greater Manchester's renaissance, to be properly understood, I think what I'd like to do is just spend a few minutes explaining the context within which that transformational journey has had to move forward. For many, many years, we've had, certainly within the UK, the most heavily centralised system of government probably to be found anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. At the same time, we have a fiscal and resource distribution system which has been focused more on perceived need rather than opportunity. And if we're not looking at opportunity, you're certainly not looking at benefit creation or value to be captured. And we have a treasury management methodology and a culture which has always focused on what I would describe as the zero-sum game. It doesn't really matter where a job has been created, so long as a job has been created. That always doesn't represent where jobs need to be created, of course. The overall result of those different factors have been painfully clear, certainly in parts of the north of England and the UK for many years. First, we have demonstrated a consistent inability to foresee economic change and its impact on particular places. Some of us are actually going through that same debate in the UK at the present time, of course, about how we actually start to forge new world trading relationships. Secondly, large industrial cities such as Manchester have found it very, very difficult to adapt to changing global economic forces, with a resultant legacy of significant industrial dereliction. Population in those cities fell very significantly, particularly in Manchester, where the characterization of our population 20 years ago or more was of an aging society and a poor society. We had high levels of worklessness. We had low levels of investment in infrastructure. We had a narrow economic and business base. We had, therefore, a network of underperforming cities with low levels of productivity. The legacy, therefore, for my generation of executives and leaders was not particularly good. We then started to address the need for new principles to underpin the transformation process. If the country wanted to become outward-facing, we thought, internationalist in nature, and one which understood the challenges of the modern world, we had to place city regions at the heart of new policies. Any efficient national economy which you could address and evaluate anywhere in the world, if it was going to attract international trade and investment, had to ensure that their cities, whether large or small, achieved their full potential. And if we were going to secure greater social mobility and equality and ensure that all the residents who lived in cities played their full part in economic success, people needed to be at the heart of that strategy too. In my view, governments can't deliver all of those objectives from their parliaments, however effective those governments are. Yes, they can define minimum standards of provision. Yes, they can manage the economy. They can pursue fiscal disciplines. They can determine priorities. But also there is a role to be played about how places are made attractive for people to live, to work, and to invest. It was very easy 20 years ago or more for my predecessors, faced with the challenges they had to contend with, to say, of course, that this was all the fault of national governments, national policies. While that was obviously partly true, I'm not sure we did enough locally to demonstrate what we would do better, whether we knew what we could do and that we were competent and trusted partners. Our strategy, therefore, was multifaceted. First, the need to be clear about our ambitions and our strategic direction and objectives. Use evidence independently if necessary, and ensure that we could bring forward ideas and programs that commanded the widest possible support of stakeholders. Rethink the utilization of our assets. Diversify our business base. Build up our university research and innovation capability. Invest in sport and culture. Address weaknesses in our economy and work up plans for correcting them. Put people at the heart of that process. Show what we would do differently by exercising more influence and control over wider public service provision. And crucially, and this was the very difficult bit, particularly for local members, rethink our own governance structures. Start to think about the structures that are needed to work at an economic geography level, not just administrative boundaries. Challenge ourselves to ask the questions, are we really equipped to take more responsibility for growing our economy? Can we make the big decisions? Can we rationalize different priorities? Can we be practical, efficient, and effective in creating new structures to deliver? Can we therefore become a widely respected place leadership partner, not only for the City of Manchester, but for Greater Manchester as a whole? And to government, we explained our invitation for them to help us in this endeavour. Support was also required in the execution of our plans by indicating to us how we would work together closely through a series of city deals. And to business, we asked, don't just talk to us, help us to take responsibility to set up new structures where you too can play an active part in evaluating and assuming leadership roles with the public sector. So, how far have we come? There are now, well, over the last 10, 15 years, there has been an increase in the population of Manchester of over 240,000 people. We now have 110,000 businesses. Our economy at £58 billion, rising to 60, is bigger than the Welsh economy, the Northern Ireland economy, and many parts of the UK. What's also interesting is some of the timelines. This stuff is not done overnight. You know, we have been working hard since 1986 to create the systems, the processes, the structures to move ourselves forward. The starting point, just make a few highlights here. The starting point was in 1986 with the creation of a voluntary organization of all 10 local authorities called AGMA. In 1994, we started to define our strategic prospectus. We started during the 90s to develop new structures with active leadership from the private sector about how we promoted ourselves in terms of trade and investment, and more particularly, how we created new foci for change. In 2009 was a very important part, because as part of our journey, we wanted to see our strategy independently scrutinized, called the Manchester Independent Economic Review. A group of international, widely respected economists came in to scrutinize all of our proposals, all of our policies, in order to demonstrate whether or not we were moving forward in the right direction. And what followed was the creation in 2011 of the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. What we didn't do is start having conversations about how some local authorities should be merged by others. We thought that was not going to be a particularly helpful process of engagement. We all recognise the importance of local ties, the association which community have with their local authorities. But we came up with the notion of bringing together 10 local authorities working at Greater Manchester level on those functions only which needed to be driven and executed at Greater Manchester level, including, of course, transport. And what followed was a series of quite innovative relationship-changing initiatives, particularly in relation to city deals and devolution. One of the most significant parts of our process was a commitment made by the 10 local authority leaders, where in order to address the key infrastructure requirements of Greater Manchester, how people access jobs, how business access markets, we had some fundamental weaknesses which we needed to address. And we needed to address those in the context of a national system for resource allocation, which frankly favoured London more than the rest of the country. So what we did was we decided to create our own transport fund. We took what little resource was being made available to us by central government, and we added to that our own resources and created, in 2009 or thereabouts, a borrowing capability of over £1.5 billion, which, determined through evidence, would create over 21,000 jobs, and which would then create a net benefit to the economy of over £1.3 billion by 2021. Our first city deal actually firmly recognised that transport fund, but more particularly, for the first time that it had ever been done, created the opportunity for the local authorities in Greater Manchester to capture through business rates the payback which has been associated with that investment. 50p of that a year of that £1.3 billion, which creates something like 20 to 30 million pounds a year, is now recirculated back into our transport investment fund. And that is the first time that has been done, and I think it's still yet to be done elsewhere. The other important innovation was the Greater Manchester Devolution Agreement. That's something which some of us have been working on for many, many years. And what it did was, for the first time, started to change the constitutional relationship between local authorities in Greater Manchester through the Combined Authority, as well as central government. It focused on a number of key issues. Transport, of course, housing. The highlight there was the ability to create a £300 million investment fund which enabled us to deploy that investment to support our particular priorities around the functionality of the housing market in Greater Manchester. Skills and business support, which we're now responsible for, uniquely also health and social care, where now the responsibility for administering a £6 billion a year health and social care programme is now discharged through Greater Manchester, still delivering national government priorities around the mandate for the National Health Service, but crucially, because we want to put people at the heart of the process of change, to create new platforms for the reform of public services so that we commission better and that we develop new early help and early intervention offices, which are so vital in ensuring everyone who lives in Greater Manchester can play a full and active part in the process of change. Other big aspects, of course, multi-year transport deals, responsibility for railway stations now being discharged by Transport for Greater Manchester, new responsibilities to work in partnership with Highways for England, and crucially, the opportunity to take back control of bus services, which enables bus services to be determined in the light of the actual requirements of residents rather than the requirements of bus operators. One of the other innovations which has come about is the Northern Powerhouse. If we want to correct regional imbalances, if we want to support the growth and development of a significant part of the north of England, where 16 people live, where we have the ability to create over 7 million jobs, and add significantly to the gross value of the north of England economy and therefore the national economy, then we needed to do things differently. And what we've been working on now for nearly 10 years now, is to define not just a clear transport plan, which is founded around the principle that the better way you connect individual city regions, you improve connectivity. You start by aligning that connectivity with sectoral approaches which are distinctively linked to the assets of the north of England, particularly around energy, advanced manufacturing, advanced materials, life sciences, data technology. Those are all very, very significantly distinctive assets in the north of England and provide unique platforms for new trade and investment capacities. We have the opportunity to rebalance our national economy, and in doing so, actually start to reduce the differential between national spending between London and the rest of the country. And Transport for the North was therefore set up, a statutory body, not without some very serious engagement, discussion, and if I may say so, disagreements with the centre, but under the leadership of the former Chancellor George Osborne, this was actually brought forward, which is now responsible for a 20-year multi-billion-pound investment strategy, which includes a whole range of transformational projects around rail, around airports, about how we link airports to the rest of the system, highways, ticketing, freight and logistics. And already our new Prime Minister, whatever else he's done, he certainly came to Manchester in the second day of his office, so he knew where his priorities lie, and actually made the very brave announcement, it has to be said, that he would commit publicly to the cornerstone of that new transport strategy was the creation of a new rail link across the Pennines between the great city of Manchester and the great city of Leeds. The future of the Greater Manchester economy is now in safe hands. We have a new mayor. That new mayor is called Andy Burnham. Andy is actually responsible for a whole range of different activities. Under his leadership, we are now moving forward apace. And the debate, as I finish, around devolution and transport, which is not only going to taking place here, is taking place all over the world. And what I wish to do is to thank you for the courtesy of listening to me, and I wish you well in your future endeavours. Thank you very much indeed.